The arrival of shadows. The stars stretched endlessly, a silent canvas of light that seemed to promise peace. From Earth's orbit, humanity had long gazed at the cosmos with wonder, curiosity, and cautious hope. But tonight, that hope was tinged with tension. Something dark was approaching. Something enormous, something that could have shattered civilizations with a single command. On the bridge of the human flagship Aurora's Dawn, Captain Elara Voss stood with her hands clasped behind her back, her gaze locked on the viewport. Her crew, a diverse group of humans trained for space exploration, military operations, and scientific discovery, moved with quiet efficiency. Yet beneath their calm exterior was a ripple of anticipation, an undercurrent of excitement that only humans could manage in the face of what should have been sheer terror. Across the void, massive warships glided silently, their black hulls absorbing starlight like a bottomless pit. They were the vanguard of the Galactic Empire, a power that had subjugated countless star systems, assimilated entire species, and annihilated any who resisted. The reports had described the Empire's ships as colossal, bristling with weaponry, and guided by strategies that no other civilization had survived. Yet, as the first Imperial flagship crested the edge of the solar system, something unexpected happened. Lieutenant Rintaler, a pilot known for his dry humor and uncanny instincts, let out a soft chuckle. "Are we supposed to be scared?" he asked, his eyes wide with disbelief. Elara turned, her lips twitching into a faint smile. "Apparently intimidation isn't our strong suit," she said. "But let's see what they've got." The Empire's ships formed a menacing formation, their sheer size casting shadows over distant planets and moons. On the communication channels, a deep, commanding voice boomed across the spectrum. "Humans of Earth, surrender immediately. Resistance is futile. Compliance ensures survival." The crew of the Aurora's Dawn exchanged glances and then, unexpectedly, all tension dissolved into laughter. A laugh, clear and defiant, echoed across the bridge. It was not mockery of the situation, it was a recognition of the absurdity of fear in the face of such odds. Humans had survived against impossible odds before, and in that instinctive confidence lay a strength no empire could predict. "Did you hear that, Captain?" said Ensign Lyra Senna, barely able to contain her giggle. "They think we'll surrender." "Really?" Elara leaned forward, resting her hands on the console. "Let them think that. Let them underestimate us. That's where our advantage lies." As the Empire's ships advanced, humans prepared their own vessels, not sleek, not polished like the Empire's, but fast, versatile, and brimming with ingenuity. The Aurora's Dawn itself had been retrofitted from a civilian exploration cruiser into a war-ready flagship, combining technology scavenged from abandoned colonies, innovative Earth designs, and sheer human creativity. Rintaler walked past the viewport, a playful grin on his face. "You know, back home I always thought space was calm, peaceful, romantic. Now I'm not so sure." Elara chuckled, shaking her head. "Romantic? Only humans would think this is romantic." Outside, the first of the Empire's weapons fired. Blue-white beams cut across the void, disintegrating asteroids and sending shockwaves across the nearby debris fields. The crew braced themselves, but fear did not take hold. Instead, it became a challenge, a game of wit, precision, and daring. "Targeting vectors calculated," muttered Cale Rhine, the ship's chief engineer, his fingers flying over the controls. "Our shields are at full capacity. We can dodge their first wave." "Good," Elara replied. "Because we're not hiding. We're showing them exactly who they're dealing with." The Empire's fleet loomed larger with every passing moment. Their size was overwhelming, their firepower unmatched. But humanity had something the Empire did not anticipate: imagination, unpredictability, and sheer audacity. Every move a human made was unpredictable, every response unconventional. They were not machines to be calculated, they were free-thinking, laughing, adaptive beings. Lyra Senna tapped a holographic map. "Captain, the Empire's formation is impressive. But it's rigid. Predictable." Elara's eyes glinted with determination. "Perfect. Then we'll be the variable they didn't account for. Prepare the fleet. This is our first impression, and it must be memorable." Even the smaller ships, hastily assembled from civilian crafts and old mining vessels, moved with grace and precision. They danced between the Empire's laser streams, weaving through fields of space debris, and occasionally even nudging Imperial drones into collision courses. It was audacious, reckless, brilliant, and, most importantly, human. Rintaler's voice came over the comms, full of excitement. "Captain, I have a clear shot at their lead ship. Permission to engage?" Elara smiled. Engage. But make it memorable. As the first human attacks began, the Empire's officers could scarcely believe what they saw. A tiny species, technologically inferior, fearless, and, most shockingly, laughing in the face of annihilation. Each shot the humans fired was unconventional, creative, and devastatingly effective. Each maneuver seemed almost playful, a dance of defiance against the cold, precise machinery of the Empire. The first skirmish set the tone. The Empire's pride had been challenged, not by firepower alone, but by the spirit of humanity, their unyielding confidence, and their refusal to be intimidated. In the observation deck of the Aurora's dawn, Ilara turned to her crew, her expression a mixture of pride and determination. "Remember this," she said. "They may be bigger, faster, stronger, but they have never faced humans like us. And they will never forget this day." Outside, the stars continued to shine. The Empire loomed closer, but for the first time in the history of interstellar conflict, an entire species faced annihilation and laughed. And somewhere in the command corridors of the Galactic Empire, Admiral Cor Valen clenched his fists. These humans, they're impossible. The shadows had arrived, but humanity was ready. Not with fear, not with despair, but with courage, ingenuity, and laughter echoing across the cosmos. In the vast theater of space, one thing was already certain. The encounter between humans and the Galactic Empire would become legend. Laughing in the face of doom. The Imperial fleet hung in space like a dark storm cloud, its warships bristling with weapons that could annihilate entire planets. Every sensor aboard the Aurora's dawn tracked the incoming threats, mapping their trajectories, predicting attack patterns. To any rational observer, the humans were doomed. The odds were astronomically against them. Yet, something remarkable had already begun. The humans were laughing. Did anyone else think this was supposed to be terrifying? Lieutenant Rin Taller asked again, leaning against a console with a grin that refused to be shaken. Captain Ilara Voss turned from her station, her expression a mixture of amusement and resolve. "We're supposed to be terrified," she said. "But we're not. And that's exactly why we're still standing." The Empire's communication channels crackled with authority and threat. "Human vessels, you are outmatched. Surrender immediately or face total annihilation." From the Aurora's dawn, Ensign Lyra Senna tapped a button, broadcasting a live feed to the Empire. On screen, humans were calmly sipping tea, a small orchestra playing an improvised tune in the background, and children, projected via holograms from colony ships, danced as if at a festival. "Care for a biscuit?" Ilara said, her voice echoing across the channels. The Imperial officers stared at the transmission in stunned silence. "They're mocking us," thought Admiral Cor Valen. How dare they laugh? Humans, however, were not mocking, they were simply human. Fear existed, yes, but it had been transformed into defiance, ingenuity, and humor. Every laugh was a declaration, "We will not break." Rin Taller leapt into his pilot chair, strapping in with a grin. "Time to show them what we mean by unpredictability." The Empire's first volleys of plasma fire lanced across the void, aimed at obliterating the humans' modest fleet. Their beams vaporized small asteroids and tore through empty space with deadly precision. But the humans were not panicked. Instead, they maneuvered with an artistry born from countless drills, simulations, and the innate human ability to improvise. Cale Ryan, the chief engineer, shouted over the comms. "Captain, the shields are holding. I've rerouted auxiliary power to the thrusters. We can dance between their fire." Ilara's eyes sparkled. "Then let's dance." The humans' first counterattack was anything but conventional. Cargo ships retrofitted with makeshift weapons darted toward Imperial cruisers, firing bursts of plasma from jury-rigged turrets. Mining drones, repurposed as kamikaze projectiles, weaved through the chaos, creating confusion among the Empire's ranks. Every move was clever, unexpected, and utterly human. Direct hit. Rin shouted as one of the Imperial warships shuddered under an impact, a piece of its hull flaring like a dying star. And they didn't see it coming? Admiral Valen's hands trembled as he slammed them onto his console. "Impossible," he growled. They're improvising." The humans' laughter grew louder as the first volley of retaliation succeeded. Not out of cruelty, but out of sheer exhilaration, every member of the Aurora's dawn and its fleet felt the intoxicating thrill of outsmarting a foe who should have been unbeatable. Lyra Senna tapped her console furiously. "Captain, they're adjusting formation. They think they can trap us in a pincer maneuver." Ilara smiled. "Good. That means they're predictable. That means we can use it." The humans began their next move. Small, nimble ships streaked between larger warships, creating distractions, collisions, and chaos. Their unpredictability frustrated Imperial strategists, whose training relied on rigid patterns and overwhelming force. The Empire had never faced a species that didn't respond with fear or obedience, but humanity didn't respond at all. They acted. They created. They laughed. Meanwhile, aboard the Aurora's Dawn, Ilara's crew worked in seamless harmony. Kale's engineers rerouted energy from non-essential systems to enhance shields and weapon output. Lyra Senna calculated attack vectors and suggested maneuvers that seemed reckless but worked flawlessly in practice. Rin Taller executed daring flight paths that would have been considered suicidal by any other species. But for humans, risk was part of the thrill. "Captain," Rin shouted over the comms, "watch this." He piloted the Iron Sparrow, a vessel cobbled together from salvaged ships, directly into a tight formation of Imperial drones. At the last moment he veered upward, and the drones collided with each other, sending sparks and debris scattering across the battlefield. The Empire's response was immediate, but ineffective. Every tactic they employed to subdue humanity was countered in unexpected ways. Humans adapted on the fly, turning their disadvantages into advantages. A weak hull became a tool for distraction. Improvised weapons caused critical damage. And laughter, ever present, was their unspoken weapon, a signal of defiance that shook the Empire's confidence. Even the Aurora's Dawn itself played a part in the chaos. Ilara ordered the ship to execute a daring maneuver through a dense asteroid field, a path too narrow for the Empire's colossal warships. As the humans weaved through space rocks, the Imperials struggled to keep pace, their formation breaking apart in confusion. "This is amazing," Lyra Senna whispered, watching the chaos unfold. "They can't touch us." Ilara nodded. "They underestimated us from the start. That's their mistake. And mistakes are fun to exploit." Hours passed, though it felt like minutes. The humans' morale remained unshakable, their laughter resonating even through the comms. The Empire, frustrated and confused, began withdrawing slightly, regrouping to rethink their strategy. But the humans didn't stop. Small crafts performed daring hit-and-run attacks, drones carried improvised bombs that scattered debris into the enemy's path, and the Aurora's Dawn itself orchestrated maneuvers that resembled a dance more than warfare. Every action reinforced a singular truth: humanity was unpredictable, resourceful, and utterly fearless in the face of annihilation. They had turned fear into audacity, despair into humor, and the possibility of defeat into a game of creativity and strategy. Rin Taller laughed as he dodged a particularly close volley. "You know, Captain, I think they're starting to respect us. Or maybe they're just terrified." Ilara chuckled. "A little of both, I'd say. But never forget, the fear of underestimation is our greatest weapon." As the first skirmish drew to a close, the Imperial fleet retreated slightly, nursing wounds they had never expected to sustain. They had underestimated the humans, and the lesson had been brutally, hilariously clear. This species was unlike any other. On the bridge of the Aurora's Dawn, the crew gathered to catch their breath, their laughter fading into satisfied smiles. Ilara raised her hand in a silent toast. "To humanity," she said. "To courage. To laughter. To the fact that we refuse to be broken." And somewhere deep in the dark corridors of the Empire, Admiral Valen's face was pale, his jaw clenched. "These humans, they are impossible," he muttered. "We will need to rethink everything." The battle was far from over, but one thing was already certain. The humans had survived the first encounter, not through strength alone, but through ingenuity, audacity, and the defiant laughter that echoed across the stars. The legend of humanity was only beginning, and the universe was about to witness just how extraordinary this species could be. The first strike. The stars burned bright and distant, uncaring of the war that now brewed beneath their cold light. 4 hours, the humans had danced between the Empire's attacks with an ease that defied logic and physics. But now, the moment had come for something the Galactic Empire had never expected. A counterattack from a species they thought too primitive to even understand war. Aboard the Aurora's Dawn, Captain Ilara Voss stood with unwavering focus. Her crew gathered around tactical holograms flickering with data. Enemy ship positions, shield strength readings, energy signatures, and projected maneuver charts. But these calculations were merely suggestions for humans. They never stuck to the script. "Captain," said Lieutenant Rin Taller, his voice vibrating with adrenaline, "our scout drones have mapped their forward strike formation. They're preparing a full power surge." Ilara's eyes narrowed. "Meaning they'll unleash everything they have." Kale Ryan, the chief engineer, stepped forward holding a datapad covered with hastily scribbled notes and diagrams. Their energy buildup is unstable. If we hit their primary capacitors at the right moment, we can trigger a chain reaction. It won't destroy their flagship, but it will crack their formation. Lyra Senna folded her arms. You want us to punch the Empire in the face? Kale shrugged. In a manner of speaking. A grin slowly formed across Alara's face. Then let's hit them where it hurts. The crew sprang into action. Humanity prepares its first strike. The human fleet, scattered but resilient, shifted into new positions. Civilian crafts, modified mining haulers, converted research shuttles, and cargo barges armed with improvised cannons, moved into formation beside true military vessels. It was a ridiculous sight. Uneven hulls patched with mismatched alloys, engines from outdated models blazing as bright as they could. And yet, they looked ready. Ready to change the galaxy. Rin Taller took control of the Iron Sparrow, his beloved patchwork fighter that shouldn't have been capable of leaving orbit, yet flew with the grace of a legendary starship. All squadrons lock in, he commanded. Weapons hot. Let's make history. The Empire's final warning. Suddenly the Empire broadcast system flared to life again. Humans, boomed Admiral Corvalin, his deep voice echoing with contempt. This is your last chance. Surrender or be reduced to cosmic dust. Alara didn't blink. Mute him. Lyra snorted. Done. Across the human fleet, laughter erupted on open channels. Man, he's dramatic, Rin muttered. Someone get him a cup of tea, replied Kale. Or a nap, added Lyra. Their banter carried across space, reaching even the civilian ships. Morale surged. Fear evaporated. Humanity faced annihilation with a grin. The battle ignites. The Empire fired first. A massive surge of plasma streaked across space, illuminating the battlefield in blue-white brilliance. The shockwave rippled through the void, powerful enough to tear lesser ships apart. But Alara's fleet was ready. Evasive maneuver Delta 5, she ordered. The Aurora's Dawn rolled sharply to starboard, engines roaring as it cut through the blast with only scorched plating. Smaller ships twisted and darted between the attack's wake, their pilots relying on reflex, instinct, and sheer stubbornness. Shields at 60%, Kale reported. That'll do, Alara replied. All ships returned fire. Human vessels unleashed their counterstrike. Modified plasma railguns thundered. EMP flares streaked forward like stars being thrown by hand. Scrapped mining lasers, normally used for boring through asteroids, lanced toward Imperial hulls, slicing clean lines through armor that wasn't designed for such raw, concentrated heat. One Imperial cruiser exploded in a burst of light. Rin hooped. First blood belongs to us. Unleashing the Iron Sparrow. But the real attack had yet to begin. Rin, Alara said calmly, the capacitors? He was already on it. The Iron Sparrow tore through the battlefield, leaving behind a shimmering trail of ionized gas. Imperial fighters locked onto him, firing relentlessly, but he flew unpredictably, swerving, looping, drifting sideways, even flipping mid-flight. No logical flight pattern detected. An Imperial officer shouted on the Empire's bridge. That's because he's not following one, Valen growled. Rin laughed through the comms because of course he did. Ahead loomed the Empire's massive forward capacitor rings, glowing structures on their flagship that pulsed with terrifying energy. Kale, Rin said, I sure hope your calculations are right. Me too, Kale replied. Because if they're wrong, well, you won't have time to worry about it. Comforting. Rin accelerated, his tiny fighter rushing toward the heart of the Empire's power like an angry wasp charging a dragon. The strike that shook the Empire. The Iron Sparrow fired a single torpedo. Just one. It wasn't impressive. It wasn't sleek. It wasn't advanced technology. It was a torpedo built from salvaged missile parts and a repurposed plasma generator. But it was aimed perfectly. The torpedo detonated on the capacitor node. And everything went white. The shockwave hit the Iron Sparrow first, tossing Rin's ship like a pebble in a hurricane. The Empire's shield arrays flickered violently. Energy arced between their flagship's power conduits, snapping like electric whips across the hull. Multiple cruisers nearby were thrown off balance. Two collided, triggering a cascade of secondary explosions. On the Aurora's Dawn, Lyra gasped. He did it. He actually did it. Alara clenched her fist, pride swelling in her chest. Signal the fleet. Press the advantage. Empire in disarray. Admiral Valen stared at his screens in disbelief. A single human ship did this? His bridge officers were scrambling to stabilize their systems. "Admiral, we've lost primary shields. Power is fluctuating, capacitors overloading. We need to retreat before." A console exploded, sparks flying. Valen's jaw tightened. They dare challenge us? They dare wound the Empire? Humanity surges forward. The human fleet moved like a tidal wave of shining determination. Ships large and small advanced in coordinated chaos, firing, maneuvering, and shouting encouragement across open channels. "Nice shot, Sparrow. Keep pushing them. They're falling back." Rin limped his damaged fighter back toward the fleet. "Captain, I'm bringing her home. She's smoking, she's screaming, but she's still flying." Ilara smiled softly. Just like her pilot. The Empire, once an unstoppable force, reeled backward in shock. They had underestimated humanity. They had underestimated laughter. They had underestimated resilience. They had underestimated the unpredictable brilliance of a species that refused to bow. The first victory. As the Empire broke formation, pulling their wounded ships back into safer territory, a wave of relief washed across the human fleet. They had survived. They had won. For the first time in the galaxy's history, the mighty Empire had been struck. Not by power, not by numbers, but by humans who refused to stop laughing. Ilara stood tall on her bridge. "This is just the beginning," she said quietly. "The galaxy will remember today, the day humanity struck back." Her crew cheered as stars glittered outside the viewport. The legend of humanity was growing. And it was only the third chapter. The following cycle, the deep space monitoring arrays above Earth pulsed with a warning glow, soft at first, then increasingly urgent, like a heartbeat slipping into panic. Across the orbital platforms, technicians leaned closer to their screens as signatures began to appear. Many signatures. Too many. A cluster. A formation. A fleet. It was unlike anything humanity had seen before. High above Earth, the flagship Eidolon crest drifted in quiet vigilance. Aboard it, Captain Aaron Vale had fallen asleep in his command chair, fingers still curled around a half-empty cup of recycled coffee. He jolted awake when the tactical deck dimmed to emergency red. "Report," he muttered, his voice still thick with sleep. His second-in-command, Lyra Damaris, spun her hollow console toward him. "We have mass jump signatures beyond Saturn's orbit. Dozens at least. Possibly more incoming." Aaron blinked hard. "Are they Imperial?" Lyra nodded. "Their energy signatures match the Oblivion Choir, the covert arm of the Galactic Empire. The ones Valthorin warned us about." Aaron straightened in his seat. The Empire's shadow fleet. The bridge fell silent. Not out of fear, humans had long surpassed that stage, but because every officer understood what that name meant. The Oblivion Choir did not negotiate. Did not speak. Did not threaten. They simply erased. On the other side of the system, aboard a derelict research station orbiting Titan, Emperor Valthorin Kale stood before a cracked observation window. His breathing, once steady, now trembled with a mix of dread and disbelief. "They came," he whispered. Dr. Mira Solon, adjusting a cluster of scanners behind him, paused at the tremor in his tone. "Is this the fleet you warned us about?" Valthorin nodded. His golden eyes dimmed. "The choir's arrival means the High Council has chosen extermination over diplomacy. They do not accept a defection." "Exile?" Mira corrected gently. "No," his voice was hollow. "They seek to erase the shame of my failure. I tried to stop the last war, and for that they wish to unmake me." He spoke with the weary weight of someone who had spent centuries holding back tides no one else could see. Mira stepped beside him, folding her arms as she gazed at the expanding ghost lights of the incoming fleet. "Then it's a good thing you chose the right side this time." Valthorin studied her. "Do you truly believe humanity can survive them?" Mira didn't hesitate. "Survive? Emperor, we're planning to beat them." Valthorin blinked in confusion. For a split second, the mighty conqueror looked genuinely lost. Then Mira grinned. And Valthorin felt, against all logic, a sliver of hope. The Imperial fleet emerged from their interstellar tunnel in perfect formation. Clad in black plating that devoured starlight, their ships resembled vast predatory silhouettes. Silent, cold, merciless. Each vessel carried the same insignia. A single descending slash, the mark of severance. On their bridge, Archdirector Zerion Vesk, commander of the Oblivion Choir, watched the blue jewel of Earth rotate peacefully in the distance. Pathetic, he thought. A primitive world pretending at power. The Council so greatly feared these creatures that he was ordered to erase them? Absurd. Have the defected Emperor's last known coordinates been traced? He asked. A masked sentinel turned to him. Yes, Archdirector. Tracking signal suggests he is with them. Vesk's lips curled. So the traitor hides behind animals. He raised a hand. Prepare the arsenal. Once we eliminate the Emperor, cleanse the system. Leave nothing. The choir obeyed without emotion. Without question. As always. Back aboard the Eidolon Crest, Earth's defense commanders assembled, virtually and in person, across a shimmering web of tactical projections. General Rafe Harkon, grizzled and imposing, growled, "This is no scouting unit. This is a full purging formation." Aaron crossed his arms. Then we treat it as such. Lyra zoomed in on the Imperial formation. Their cloak tech is advanced, but their energy trails betray exact positioning. We can predict their vectors. Rafe raised a brow. Meaning? Aaron smiled slightly. Meaning they're big, scary, and obvious. One of the junior tacticians snorted. Val Thorin, appearing in the center of the projection, studied their reactions with astonishment. You find humor in this? Aaron shrugged. Is that weird? It is unprecedented. He didn't say it aloud, but Val Thorin couldn't understand why humans weren't afraid. In his empire, a single whisper of the choir sent entire civilizations fleeing or kneeling. But these humans? They were cracking jokes. How soon until they reach Jupiter's orbit? Mira asked. Lyra checked the trajectory. 3 hours. General Rafe smacked a fist into his palm. Plenty of time. Let's irritate them a little. Irritate? Val Thorin repeated, baffled. Aaron grinned. Emperor, with all due respect, you've never seen humans when we prepare for a fight. We don't do fear. We do creativity, Mira added. And sarcasm, Lyra said. Above all, Aaron concluded, we do payback when someone threatens our home. Val Thorin stared at them, these unpredictable, absurd, wildly fearless beings, and felt something he had never felt in all his centuries of ruling. Admiration. 3 hours later, the first volley struck. But not from the Empire. From Earth. A swarm of microdrones streaked out from behind Jupiter's magnetic veil, spiraling like a cloud of glittering insects. They detonated near the Imperial fleet, not as weapons but as interference generators. Suddenly, the choir's perfectly synchronized formation cracked. Their stealth systems flickered. Their sensors scrambled. Their navigation AI looped. Archdirector Vesk snapped upright. What is this? A technician bowed. Unknown human countermeasure, Archdirector. Countermeasure? No, this is sabotage. Then louder. Do they mean to mock us? Another nearby sentinel flinched. It appears so, Archdirector. The drones are broadcasting something on all channels. Vesk's eyes narrowed. Show me. A holoscreen blinked to life. On it, a cartoon smiley face wearing a space helmet. Underneath it, welcome to the Sol system. Please take a number. The bridge fell dead silent. Vesk trembled with outrage. They dare? But the message changed again. This time it read, Warning, humanity is not responsible for damage caused to hostile invaders. Proceed at your own risk. Another silence. Then Vesk roared in fury. Back on the Eidolon Crest, Aaron leaned back with a satisfied smirk. I think that irritated them. Lyra nodded. Oh, definitely. Val Thorin stared at the humans as if seeing a new species entirely. You are facing the deadliest armada of the Empire, he said slowly, and your first move is mockery? Aaron shrugged. Humor is our opening strategy. Mira added, winning is our finishing one. Val Thorin exhaled, almost laughing. No wonder the Council fears you. Aaron turned to the tactical display, eyes narrowing with determination. All right, he said. Time to show the choir what humanity does when the shadows arrive. He raised a hand. Begin phase 2. The room brightened with 100 tactical confirmations. And the silent armada of shadows, once so confident, now found itself facing something the Empire had never encountered. A species that refused to be afraid. A species that laughed in the face of darkness. A species ready to carve its place in the galaxy. Humanity. The void between Jupiter and the invading armada crackled with tension, the quiet before a storm powerful enough to shake a star system. Humanity had annoyed the Empire's most feared fleet. Now came the moment to strike. Aboard the Eidolon Crest, Captain Aaron Vale stood with hands clasped behind his back, eyes fixed on the floating tactical display. Despite the danger, there was a sharp grin on his face. The calm, controlled kind that came from absolute confidence in his crew. All fleets report ready, Lyra announced. Outer system defense grid hot. Phase 2 awaiting your command. Aaron nodded. Transmit my orders. Across the Sol system, a network of human warships shifted into formation, sleek, angular vessels built not for intimidation, but for adaptability and raw precision. This was not a brute force navy. It was a thinking one. On Titan's research station, Emperor Valthorin Kale watched the unfolding strategy with unhidden awe. Humans weren't merely reacting, they were shaping the battlefield. Dr. Mira Solon approached him, securing her gloves. They're moving into the lattice formation. It's new. Built just last year. New. Valthorin turned. But it's so elegant. Precise. That's what happens when you let every scientist in the solar system argue with each other for 12 months, Mira replied with a grin. Human innovation, fast, chaotic, and somehow brilliant. Valthorin looked back toward the hologram of Earth's fleet. And completely unpredictable. That's our secret weapon, Mira said. Now come on. We'll need you on the comms. If the choir tries to contact you, we want to manage the narrative. Narrative? Valthorin repeated. Mira winked. Humans love drama. Inside the flagship of the Oblivion Choir, Archdirector Zerion Vesk stormed toward his command throne, fury simmering under every step. How dare they, he muttered. How dare they mock us? His ship's dark metal walls pulsed with low, ominous tones. Every crew member stood still, rigid and silent in fear of drawing his wrath. Status, he snapped. A sentinel bowed. The human microdrones have disrupted cloaking systems. Restoration in progress. Then accelerate it. And prepare the purge cannons. Another sentinel spoke cautiously. Archdirector, the humans appear to be advancing. Vesk froze. Advancing? They charge us. Yes, Archdirector. Vesk turned slowly, disbelief contorting into rage. Then crush them. Send a warning volley. No, send two. On Aaron's command deck, the warning flashed across sensors as the choir's weapons powered up. Lyra's eyes widened. Purge cannons charging. Aaron took a calm sip of coffee. Good. They're right on schedule. Lyra blinked. You planned for this? Phase 2 relies on them firing first. He snapped his fingers. Activate the Aurora Veil. The entire ship resonated with a deep thrum as its hull shimmered with a veil of refracted light. Across the fleet, dozens of human vessels engaged the same defensive holographic barrier, projectors bending light, radiation, and sensor signatures into controlled chaos. When the choir fired, brilliant beams of violet destruction lanced forward, and slid harmlessly through distorted holographic reflections. What the Empire hit weren't the real ships. The void exploded with phantom duplicates and distorted echoes. Human warships seemed to shimmer, split, multiply, vanish, then reappear. The choir paused, confused. Aaron chuckled. Perfect. They're officially frustrated. Now Phase 2B. Unleashing the haze swarm, Lyra confirmed. From behind Earth's fleet, a million silver motes streaked forward like a cloud of glittering dust. These weren't drones. These were nanite harriers too small to track individually, yet devastating in synchronized waves. They tore through the choir's outer shields, not to destroy but to inject interference codes. Their purpose was simple. Blind the Empire. Disable targeting. Scramble command relays. Interrupt internal communication. Like mosquitoes attacking a giant. Vesk watched in horror as command pathways flickered. What is happening? A sentinel trembled. Unknown microsystems are infiltrating the defense shell, like a virus. Vesk slammed his fist into the nearest console. Purge them. We cannot target something so small. Vesk cut them off with a roar. Then fire the scatter cannons. His crew obeyed instantly. But scatter cannons required aiming. And their targeting systems were already compromised. All they could do was fire wildly, shots blooming across empty space hitting nothing. The choir's precision was gone. And humanity was just getting started. Aboard the Eidolon Crest, Aaron felt the opening he'd been waiting for. They're disoriented, he said. Let's finish Phase 2. Tell all strike wings to begin the pincer drift. Across the battlefield, human vessels split into two sweeping arcs, moving in opposite directions like dancers tracing a cosmic spiral. Their cork engines left faint blue trails across the dark backdrop. Humanity's maneuver was beautiful, deadly, and shockingly bold. They're surrounding the choir, Mira whispered on Titan. That's insane. Valthorin's voice was tight. It's brilliant. No Empire fleet practices for being flanked. It is unthinkable. Mira smirked. Humans don't believe in unthinkable. From the choir flagship, Vesk watched the encirclement forming. Humans, primitive, short-lived humans, were maneuvering around the Empire's elite fleet. This cannot be happening, he hissed. But it was. And then it got worse. A message appeared on every Imperial screen, flashing in bright blue text. You fired first. Now it's our turn. Then the human fleet unleashed their attack. Railshot lances streaked from dozens of vessels, beams of compressed plasma carving through the choir's outer ranks. Human weapons weren't the strongest in the galaxy, but they were fast, efficient, sharply accurate. And the choir, newly blinded and disorganized, couldn't react in time. One ship fell. Then another. Then 5 more. The Empire's perfect formation began to collapse. Vesk slammed both fists into his throne. Retaliate. But retaliation was now impossible. Human strikes were coordinated to perfection. Inside the Eidolon crest, Lyra's voice rang out, exhilarated. Choir's right wing is breaking. Aaron nodded sharply. Good. Tighten the pincer. Don't let them regroup. For the first time in its history, the Oblivion Choir was losing. Far from the chaos on Titan's viewing deck, Valthorin exhaled slowly. Your people, he said quietly, fight like wildfire. Mira crossed her arms proudly. We warned you. Humans play rough. They do more than that, Valthorin whispered. They rewrite the rules. He watched Earth's fleet close in on the choir, relentless and fearless. And this, he said, eyes gleaming with new conviction, is only the first strike. The void trembled with the metallic howls of dying warships as the battle between humanity and the Oblivion Choir reached its breaking point. Where once the Empire's fleet had glided in perfect, silent formation, now its ships drifted in disarray, shields flickering, engines stuttering, weapons firing blindly into empty space. For the first time in centuries, the galaxy's most feared armada was losing. Aboard the Eidolon crest, Captain Aaron Vale watched the tactical holos bloom with collapsing Imperial signatures. Left flank neutralized, Lyra reported, awe slipping into her voice. They can't recover. They can't even coordinate. Aaron nodded. Good. Keep pressure on the center. Don't let them stabilize their command chain. Already on it, she replied. Strike wings Epsilon and Kova are closing in. The once impenetrable choir of shadowy ships was crumbling, piece by piece. And humanity was turning the cracks into fractures. On the Titan research station, Emperor Valthorin Kale stood transfixed by the projections. He watched in disbelief as human ships danced through the fray with a wild precision the Empire had always dismissed as chaotic inefficiency. But it wasn't chaos. It was creativity. Dr. Mira Solon joined him at the viewport. Not what you expected? It is more, Valthorin whispered. Your people adapt faster than any species I've witnessed. You do not compute battle. You feel it. That's called instinct, Mira said with a grin. We're annoyingly good at it. Valthorin studied the displays again. The choir's central command vessels attempted to reposition, but human forces kept disrupting them, cutting down communication relays, disabling engines, and slicing through their retreat vectors. It's like watching fire devour a shadow, he murmured. Meanwhile, on the choir flagship Vorthus Dominion, Archdirector Zerion Vesk paced in fury. His command deck flickered with red alarms. Sparks fell from a damaged ceiling conduit. Thick cables writhed like wounded serpents. Archdirector, a sentinel stammered, our rear battalions have been annihilated. Vesk spun, eyes burning with a mix of rage and disbelief. How do these animals, these primitives, hold such power? They don't, the sentinel whispered. They simply refuse to yield. Vesk slammed the sentinel aside with a single swing. We are the choir of oblivion. We erase worlds. Another officer stepped forward, trembling. Archdirector, perhaps we should consider retreat. Retreat? Vesk snarled. From humans? Never. He pointed toward the holomap, where human vessels swarmed like a tempest of blue fire. Charge the world cutter. The deck fell silent. A single whispered protest escaped one sentinel. But, Archdirector, using that weapon in populated space violates. Vesk crushed the protest with a single glare. Charge it, he repeated coldly. If I must burn this system to remove my shame, then I will. Back on the Eidolon crest, Lyra froze. Captain, energy spike detected. Massive. They're powering something on the flagship. Aaron leaned in. Type. Lyra's voice faltered. Long-range gravitational disruptor. It matches no weapon they used before. Myra's voice came through the comms, alarmed. Aaron, that's a world cutter. Valthorin is confirming it now. That weapon can tear a planet's crust open. Aaron's jaw tightened. Target? Earth? Lyra whispered. They're aiming at Earth. The bridge fell silent. Aaron drew a slow breath. Not on our watch. What's our strike window? Lyra's eyes darted across readings. If we push the engine cores past the safe threshold, maybe 30 seconds. Then we do it. Captain, Lyra warned, the core could tear itself apart. It won't, Aaron said firmly, because we won't give it time to plot the course. Lyra hesitated only a moment before nodding. Aye, Captain. The Eidolon Crest's engines flared to blinding blue. In the choir flagship, Vesk stood before the weapon controls, hands poised over the final sequence. Begin the planetary fracture countdown, he ordered. The air vibrated as charged particles swirled around the world cutter's firing chamber. 10 seconds. 9. 8. Vesk smiled coldly. But then, a klaxon blared. Unidentified vessel approaching at extreme velocity, a sentinel shouted. Vesk turned sharply. Which vessel? The view screen split open, revealing a single silhouette streaking toward them like a falling star. A human ship. The Eidolon Crest. Vesk's eyes widened. Impossible. They wouldn't dare make a direct assault. But they were. Inside the Eidolon Crest, the deck trembled as the ship rammed through the outer perimeter. Sparks sprayed across the bridge. Backup generators screamed under the strain. Shields at 40%. Lyra shouted. Hold them together. Aaron yelled back. We break through that flagship or Earth burns. The Crest hurtled forward, weaving between debris and incoming fire. Humanity's finest ship, pushing itself beyond all safe limits, charging straight into the jaws of the galaxy's deadliest predator. The choir flagship loomed ahead like a black mountain. Aaron raised his hand. Fire. The Eidolon Crest released a barrage, plasma lances, kinetic rounds, focused shockwaves, every weapon firing at once. The first salvo slammed into the flagship's hull, tearing open sections of its outer armor. The second punched through exposed energy conduits. The third crippled the weapon core stabilizers. Light burst from the choir flagship in a violent surge. On Titan, Valthorin gasped. They overloaded the world cutter's alignment. Mira grinned fiercely. Which means? Valthorin finished, awestruck. It cannot fire. Aboard the Vorthus Dominion, the weapon chamber pulsed dangerously. Archdirector, a sentinel screamed. Weapon destabilizing. We cannot fire, the sequence has collapsed. Vesk roared in fury. Stabilize it. Now. But it was too late. The world cutter's fractured energy coiled inwards, then erupted in a controlled implosion, ripping through the flagship's interior. The deck buckled. Consoles exploded. Black smoke flooded the chamber. Vesk staggered, gripping a railing. No, no. I will not fall to them. But he had no choice. The flagship was lost. From the Eidolon Crest's bridge, Aaron exhaled long and slow as the colossal vessel ignited in a cascade of violet flame. Flagship destroyed, Lyra whispered. The choir is collapsing. Across the system, remaining Imperial ships broke formation, some fleeing, some falling silent as their command network dissolved. Their terror was clear, even machines could sense defeat. Human ships closed in like wolves circling wounded prey. The dreaded Oblivion choir had fallen. Aaron leaned back in his chair, exhausted but triumphant. Phase 3, he said quietly. Secure the battlefield. And prepare for survivors. Lyra nodded. We won, Captain. Aaron stared into the drifting embers of the enemy flagship. No, he murmured. We survived. The real victory comes next. On Titan, Valthorin watched the end of the battle through trembling breath. They did it, he whispered. Humans did what no empire could. Mira smiled softly. And you stood with us. For the first time in his long life, Valthorin felt something unfamiliar. Not fear. Not pride. Not relief. Hope. And something else, something sharper, more dangerous. Determination. The Empire will not accept this defeat, he said. They will prepare retaliation. Let them, Mira replied. We'll be ready. Valthorin nodded. Yes, he said quietly. Because I will help you prepare. And in the distant darkness beyond the battlefield, unseen by all, something else was watching. Something older. Something waiting. But that was for another time. For now, humanity had won its greatest battle. And the galaxy had begun to change. The wreckage of the Oblivion Choir drifted across the darkness like shattered pieces of a nightmare finally ending. Broken hulls spun silently, their blackened surfaces glowing faintly from the fading heat of battle. The Sol system, battered, exhausted but very much alive, floated in victorious stillness. For the first time since the Empire's shadow had fallen across humanity, the light was brighter. Aboard the Eidolon Crest, Captain Aaron Vale stood alone in the observation lounge. The stars stretched endlessly before him, the peaceful glitter of distant suns almost mocking the destruction scattered around Earth's sphere of influence. Lyra Damaris entered, her steps soft. "Fleet reports are in," she said. "Casualty numbers are lower than projected. Damage control is progressing system-wide." Aaron nodded, though his gaze never left the stars. "Good. The cost could have been worse." "It would have been," Lyra added, "if you hadn't taken the Crest into that flagship." Aaron smirked weakly. "Please don't remind me. My ribs are still angry about it." Lyra gave a faint grin, then stood beside him in silence. Beyond the viewing glass, a human salvage tug latched onto the broken wing of an Imperial cruiser, sparks trailing behind it like drifting fireflies. "Think they'll come back?" she asked quietly. Aaron didn't answer immediately. His thoughts were heavy, cautious. "They will," he finally said. "But next time they won't find us unprepared." On Titan's research station, Emperor Valthorin Kale and Dr. Mira Solon walked through a corridor lit in soft amber light. Technicians hurried past them, humans and a few Empire defectors now working side by side. Valthorin had exchanged his royal armor for a simpler dark blue uniform. It was still elegant but no longer cold or imposing. He looked less like a ruler, and more like someone seeking redemption. "It still astonishes me," Valthorin said, "that you humans salvage enemy technology only minutes after the battle." Mira laughed. "We call it recycling. Or curiosity. Sometimes both." "And what do you intend to do with those choir fragments?" Valthorin asked. Mira smirked. "Reverse engineer, examine, poke with sticks, our usual routine." Valthorin exhaled, amused yet troubled. "Your species is either incredibly fearless, or wonderfully foolish." "That's the charm," Mira said. "We're both." They stopped at a large viewing chamber overlooking Titan's methane plains. Valthorin stared out, hands clasped behind him. "When I announced my defection," he began slowly, "I believed I would die with a clear conscience, exiled, hunted, forgotten." Mira turned to him. "And now?" Valthorin's eyes reflected the pale golden glow of Saturn's rings. "Now," he said softly, "I believe I have a purpose again." Meanwhile, across the Sol system, humanity celebrated. Cities lit their skies with brilliant shows of color. People filled streets, rooftops, and orbiting parks with cheers. Children waved holographic banners showing cartoon versions of the Eidolon Crest. Artists painted murals of human ships fighting back against the Empire's shadowy fleet. From Mars domes to lunar cities, one phrase echoed everywhere: "We stood together." Yet even in celebration, humanity worked. Engineers repaired the defense grid. Scientists documented every detail of the Empire's technology. Strategists prepared contingency plans. Because they all understood one simple truth: victory was only the beginning. In the ruins of the choir's flagship debris, scavenger drones hummed quietly. They picked through every hull fragment, cataloging alien alloys and residual power cells. Then a drone paused. Its scanners registered a faint energy pulse inside a cracked Imperial data core, still active, still alive. It emitted a soft rhythmic vibration, like a heartbeat trapped in metal. The drone latched onto it and began transmitting. Miles away on the Eidolon Crest, Lyra's console blinked with a new alert. "Captain," she said, "salvage pod bringing in something. High-priority artifact." Aaron turned. "From the flagship?" "Affirmative. Send it to the secure lab. No analysis until Mira and Valthorin get here." Lyra hesitated. "Sir? The energy signature, it's unusual." "How unusual?" "It resembles a message." Aaron exchanged a long look with her. "A message," he repeated slowly. "From who?" Lyra swallowed. "Unknown. But it wasn't sent during the battle. It was activated after the flagship was destroyed." Aaron's eyes narrowed. "Then it wasn't a desperate signal," he murmured. "It was planned." Valthorin examined the retrieved data core with a mixture of dread and recognition. The device pulsed gently like a shard of sleeping thunder. "This is Imperial High Cipher," he whispered. "Pre-war era. Older than the choir. Mira raised a brow. Older? Meaning? Valthorn placed a hand on the device. Meaning the Empire was not alone in creating the choir. The core vibrated, projecting a pale holographic symbol into the air. A tall, elegant figure, unfamiliar, faceless, woven in lines of burning white. Mira stepped back. Who is that? Valthorn's voice shook. Not who, he replied. What? He took a slow breath. This is a sigil of the Prime Ascendancy. The empire that existed before my empire. They were thought extinct. Thought. Mira echoed. Valthorn nodded grimly. But this message proves they are not. The hologram flared and a cold mechanical voice resonated. Calibration complete. Cycle reset imminent. Prepare for ascension. The lights dimmed. The core went silent. Mira whispered, that didn't sound friendly. Valthorn turned toward Aaron, his face grave. The Empire was merely a shadow of the true architects of domination. If the ascendancy stirs again, then everything you have faced so far is nothing. Aaron folded his arms, expression hardening. Then we prepare like before. We fought one impossible enemy. We can fight another. Valthorn stared at him. The human who charged a flagship without fear, who led a species of stubborn, brilliant survivors. You humans, he whispered. You truly do not fear anything, do you? Aaron smiled. Only running out of coffee. Mira laughed. Valthorn almost did too. Far beyond the known galaxy, in a region no empire map ever dared to chart, a colossal structure stirred. A ringed citadel, ancient and cold, lit its inner engines for the first time in millennia. Silent. Patient. Awakening. The Prime Ascendancy had received the signal. And they were coming. Back in the Sol system, as dawn broke over a recovering Earth, Aaron gazed out the window of the Eidolon crest. The rising sun painted the sky with gold. Hear that? He murmured to himself. Another threat. Another empire. He straightened his shoulders. Good. Let them come. Because humanity, fearless, stubborn, unpredictable humanity, was ready. For the galaxy had changed. And the new dawn belonged to them.